Welcome friends! Imagine a city trapped amidst towering mountains, its peaks perpetually capped with snow. Although this might seem daunting for the inhabitants of this city, the reality was quite the opposite. Eldoria, a vibrant city, was home to thousands. Besides their quaint cottages, they had hearts of gold and a warm culture rooted in cooperation. However, their creator had vastly different plans for them. So then, what truly happened to the city of Eldoria? Together, let us hear this story and the sorrows that it will bring. I'm Mr. Barkstale, and this is the story of Eldoria, the lost city of snow. First, let us go back to the very beginning. Once upon a time, everything was just darkness. This darkness was so potent that a chaotic density of energy formed within it. From this energy, two ancient forces were born, light and shadow. Light bestowed illumination upon the entire universe. Its mighty power gave the first breath to the heavens, stretching into the depths of eternity. Shadow, on the other hand, spread darkness and veils of deep-rooted secrets. As the boundaries of the universe were defined, the dance between the two eventually turned into conflict. The chaotic energy from which they were born enveloped the entire universe. At the most intense moment of this conflict, stars and planets emerged. The balance of the universe was beginning to settle. Finally, light and shadow reached an agreement. For the first time, peace reigned in the universe. But the chaotic power had already spread. From this power, gods were born. The children of light and shadow scattered throughout the universe. Although the gods, acting according to their own graces, caused the peace to be disturbed over time, the universe somehow continued to maintain its balance until the god of fire, Pyraxis, violently ripped away the loved ones of Borealis, the god of snow, in a fierce attack. Borealis, tirelessly searching for the essence of his loved ones throughout the universe, expended most of his power in the process. With his last remaining strength, he descended upon a lonely planet and began to shape it in his own image. He sculpted this planet, which was nothing but rock and dust, first creating oceans and seas. Then, with great earthquakes lasting centuries, he brought forth vast land masses. After surrounding the shores with endless grains of sand from the stones he had carved for centuries, he diversified the empty lands by scattering various biomes across them. He adorned these biomes with vegetation that clung tightly to the earth, piece by piece, with his own hands. As his power began to deplete significantly, he started to search for a place to hide. After covering a corner of this realm with mountains, he carved out the center, but his memories did not leave him alone. Borealis was so distraught that an eternal blizzard engulfed the entire realm. From the mountains he created, streams flowed in all directions, fueled by Borealis's tears. Borealis had become very weak, but he had one last trick. With a single touch, he established a fountain in the middle of this fantastical realm within the mountain, one that would flow forever. And then he created his human servants to alleviate his loneliness. Over time, those delicate humans who were part of Borealis's ancient plan came to call this place Eldoria, the city of snow. In the early hours of the morning, the sun cast a soft golden glow over Eldoria, nestled in the heart of a pristine winter landscape. The thatched roofs of the charming cottages, covered with delicate layers of snow, created a picturesque scene reminiscent of a fairy tale. Smoke curled gently from the chimneys, carrying with it the comforting scent of wood-burning stoves. People strolled about, greeting each other and celebrating the return of the sun. As they walked along the cobblestone streets, the crunch of fresh snow under their boots broke the silence, echoing even in the mountains. The village square, adorned with flickering lanterns and snow-covered market stalls, was slowly awakening from its restful slumber. The marketplace, the vibrant heart of Eldoria, awaited the touch of daylight to reveal its treasures. Eldoria's medieval architecture was in harmony with its natural surroundings. Timber-framed houses, adorned with intricate carvings, showcased the craftsmanship passed down through generations. Each building seemed to hold a secret within and in its past. There were, of course, stories from bygone eras that had managed to whisper through these old stones to the present day. Sometimes I wish that I had the opportunity to go back to those days, explore Eldoria from top to bottom, and discover these mysterious stories. The tall pine trees surrounding the city stood tall and steadfast, their branches adorned with icicles that sparkled like diamonds in the morning light, causing snowflakes to twirl and dance lightly in the air, creating an ethereal atmosphere that hinted at an unseen magic. In the heart of Eldoria, the centerpiece of the town square was found. It was a magnificent fountain that never froze, despite the icy cold. Legend had it that this fountain was even older than the founders of Eldoria. When they arrived from their long journey, the fountain was already standing there, inviting them with its alluring presence as if offering them water. The founders saw this as an opportunity and settled right there. The ice sculptures beside the fountain depicted legendary creatures and fearless knights. Their forms were meticulously preserved by master sculptors. Every noon, as the sun rose, it would cast prismatic hues upon these frozen masterpieces, transforming them into a fantastic kaleidoscope of colors that enveloped Eldoria. In the distance, the towers rising from a massive castle were visible from all directions. Eldoria Castle, with its towers and battlements, served as a silent guardian, watching over the city with its persistent grace. The smoke rising from its large chimney was a testament to the warmth within and the centuries-old lineage of the Eldar family. The Eldar family was one of the migrant families that founded Eldoria. Unlike nobles who never left their castles and were unaware of the people, the Eldar family was constantly among the people. They even prepared feasts for the public in their castle. The people loved them very much. Whenever they had a problem, they could immediately go to the castle and find a solution. As the villagers prepared for the next day, the air was filled with the sounds of distant laughter and joy. Cloaked figures strolled gracefully through the snow-covered streets, their breaths leaving trails in the cold air. Mystical symbols adorned these doors and windows, a nod to the enchantments believed to protect Eldoria from the harshness of winter. As the day drew to a close, a deep darkness fell over Eldoria. At night, the warm glow of hearth fires would spill out from the cottage windows, creating a warm tapestry against the snowy ground. The Eldorians had almost become indifferent to the darkness of the outside. The beauty and cruelty of winter had withered their fears over time. Their centuries-long struggle for survival in these harsh conditions was truly admirable, but still, this struggle was quite small compared to what they would experience soon. The last snowflake was about to fall on their fantastic city. In the quaint town of Eldoria, nestled among snow-capped hills and ancient forests, winter was not just a season, but a way of life. People continued their lives in their cottages, their hearts burning warmly, and their hearts resonating with the fantastic stories told by the storyteller in the town square. The legends shared in the tavern promised them all sorts of hope, but this evening would not pass as usual for Eldoria. This time, as the last rays of the sun bid farewell to the village, a sudden spectacle in the sky painted the heavens in apocalyptic tones. The skies continued to groan for a long time. Under this supernatural atmosphere, the people exchanged worried glances. Then, suddenly, this light show in the sky grew into giant fireballs. The people, whose worries turned into admiration, soon realized that the fireballs were coming towards them, and they were filled with great terror. The streets, once warm and full of hope, now echoed with screams. Some of the fireballs targeted the charming timber-framed houses, some the cobblestone streets, some the cheerful marketplace, or the magical fountain that never froze. The first fireballs to strike shook the entire ground, and with their fiery tails they burned everything in their path. People screamed and fled as the streets were instantly engulfed in hellfire. Eldoria's characteristic wooden houses collapsed, unable to withstand the heat of the exploding fireballs. They were not built with such a disaster in mind. The statues in the town square, expertly crafted to withstand centuries, were shattered in mere seconds. Soon, the fireballs in the sky were exhausted. On the ground, they had unleashed hell. The cold wind spread the fires while also scattering scattering the smoke. Therefore, it became impossible to see anything at all. As the colorful market stalls burned, a loud voice pierced the smoke.
For Borealis' sake, Eldred, where are you?
It was Brondar, the town's blacksmith. He was trying to save his wife and children. He pierced the smoke again with his hammer.
Eldred, I'm by the fountain.
His efforts paid off and he was reunited with his wife and children. He then pointed his hammer towards the fountain and shouted,
Get into the fountain immediately and don't come out until I return.
Eldred hugged her husband before taking the children and jumping into the fountain. Brondar left his family behind and ran towards the castle. He had to see the fate of the castle and therefore the Eldar family. His sister Eleanor had also gone to the castle before everything was destroyed. There were no signs of Eldoria's cold winds anymore. The heat of hell had conquered the cold. When the smoke cleared a little, the silence of the surroundings became even more noticeable. This silence was suddenly broken by a great roar. Brondar couldn't believe his eyes. From amidst the flames, demons with large bodies, horns, and red skin were appearing. One of these demons was larger than the others. Brondar, who had hid in a corner, could hear the demons repeating the same word as one.
Malthraxis, Malthraxis, Malthraxis.
This dark legion, with swords of flame and armor that shone with a dark light, nearly melted the ground with every step. Malthraxis, besides being enormous, was the only demon among them with wings, and his horns were more magnificent compared to the other demons. His eyes were filled with a burning hatred. Undoubtedly, he was the son of Pyraxis, the god of fire. As he laughed maniacally, his eyes focused on the ruins of Eldoria. As he stepped on one of the sparks remaining from the ruins of a wooden house, the demon army began to charge around. They quickly advanced, street by street, piercing the wreckage of the houses with their flaming swords. They destroyed everything that managed to remain standing in the village square. Pity to the humans who were caught by Malthraxis' mighty hands. Although the survivors did their best to escape, the demon army hunted them down at every corner. Brondar managed to reach Eldoria Castle without being seen by these demons. But there was no sign of his sister. The magnificent Eldoria castle had become a ruin. In front of the ruins of the castle, a figure could be seen, coughing and wheezing, collapsed on the ground. Brondar approached the figure and knelt down to reach her.
Who are you? The demons are everywhere. We must leave immediately.
When the figure raised her face, Brondar was shocked for a moment. It was Princess Elijah. She was the youngest heir of the Eldar family.
Princess,
he whispered.
We must leave here.
Besides what he had witnessed until he reached the castle, Brondar had concluded from the ruin of the castle that his sister Eleanor was not alive, but he still had hope. The princess looked at Brondar and said in a trembling voice,
They are all dead, blacksmith, mother and daughter, father and son, young and old. No one is left. Eldoria is finished.
Just then, a single snowflake landed on the princess and, as it did, it melted into water, then turned into steam, unable to withstand the heat. The last Princess Elijah was, of course, right. The snowy city of Eldoria had fallen. The Eldar dynasty was left with only one person. On that dark day, the last snowflake of Eldoria's centuries-long winter had fallen, and their eternal winter had ended with an unprecedented infernal heat. A dark age now awaited the survivors, where a single question would constantly arise. According to the belief of the Eldorians, this realm was created by a god figure they called Borealis, who was as merciful as he was stern. The snow was a reflection of his suffering upon mortals, while the cold air was his eternal lament for his loved ones, who were annihilated by the dark forces of shadow. After an eternity of grief, he eventually created Eldoria, dedicating his lonely eternity to this place. With his last remaining warmth, he sculpted the lands and mountains, and with a single touch, he created that magical fountain. So then, where was he now? This is not that easy to explain. After the destruction of Eldoria, among the survivors in the ruins of the city were Princess Elijah, blacksmith Brondar, his wife Eldred, and their 2 children. Besides them, nearly hundreds of Eldorians who had managed to cling to life were still hiding among the ruins. A dark mystery brought by the destruction enveloped everything. The demon legions were gathered in the town square, awaiting their new commands from Malthraxis. Taking advantage of this, Princess Elijah, Brondar and Eldred began to rescue the Eldorians and spread the beginning of a resistance movement around. But to achieve this, they had to leave the city and return stronger. The gathered people, led by Elijah, fought desperately to leave the city, but Brondar asked Eldred to take the children and go with the princess. A single question was eating away at his mind.
Borealis!
He shouted.
I am sure he would not allow this. I must find the ancient texts. You go!
Eldred accepted this. Even though her heart ached, she hugged her husband tightly. Brondar then ran towards Eldoria and disappeared into the mist. Firstly going to his blacksmith workshop, Brondar, according to rumors, forged a sword worthy of Borealis. Then he created armor strong enough to withstand even the wrath of the gods. It was such a display that it seemed impossible not to attract Borealis. Gods prefer such displays instead of offerings after all. However, Borealis was not there that day. Brondar already understood this. He was not doing this display of heroism for him. He would have to fight desperately to reach the ancient texts. He had never produced any armor or weapons for the Eldorians before, because it was against their culture, and they just didn't need it, really. Donning the armor and the weapons that he crafted, Brondar went to the temple built by the Eldar family for Borealis. On the way, he shattered many demons with his new sword. Most of the texts in this temple had succumbed to the flames, but miraculously, a single piece of parchment stood intact. Legends say that this parchment stated that Borealis had given people an opportunity to discover their own powers and invited them to shape their own destinies. It was to be the beginning of an era when gods reduced their control over their servants and allowed them to discover their inner potential. In a way, it was the last wish of a dying god. He wanted his loved ones to be free. Brondar threw the parchment to the ground with great disappointment. He knelt down and sat there for a long time.
We are alone now.
When he stood up again, there was no trace of the old Brondar left in him. He was completely a different person. Meanwhile, Princess Elijah, with the help of Eldred, had begun to establish a brand new settlement with the Eldorians. This would be their second chance, but this time they did not have a magical fountain to determine their fate and help them. They gathered here for days and healed each other's wounds. One night, when Eldred was anxiously waiting for Brondar, Brondar appeared from behind the hills. Behind him was a wheelbarrow full of materials he had taken from the blacksmith workshop. He had pulled them all the way here by himself. Eldred had known her husband since childhood. Therefore, she could more or less understand what had happened from his face. Her question was only to show Brondar that she was there for him. She placed her hands on Brondar's shoulders and stroked them for a while.
What happened?
Only one sentence came out of Brondar's mouth.
We are alone.
And this would be the last word that they hear from him for years to come. The Eldorians continued to develop their new settlement with great determination. They grew considerably on their own. This time they began to learn how to fight to protect their new homes and their future. Brondar, on the other hand, forged new weapons and armor in the blacksmith's workshop day and night, never resting at all. Since Eldred knew that she could not stop him no matter what she did, she focused on her own work and organized the people. Years had passed since Eldoria had slipped through their fingers, but it was still as fresh in their minds as yesterday. Their warm homes, cheerful marketplaces, and eternal fountain. The Eldorians, who still chose to believe in Borealis, went to Brondar's workshop every day and watched him from afar. Maybe he would say a word. What if Borealis had spoken to him? He could have given Brondar a task himself, but Brondar never uttered uttered a single word. This, over time, broke their faith. The single question that burned within them was replaced first by sadness, then by anger. Brondar knew that this would happen. Their anger worked to his advantage. They would need it to defeat the demons that had conquered their homes. After all, they were now all alone. They had to become stronger to survive, and so it was. Over time, the spirit of Eldoria was revived by the combined efforts of the survivors. This was the settlement of Last Hope. This name symbolized the last snowflakes hidden in the spirits of these survivors. If they failed, their last hope would also be extinguished. I know that you'll be asking, didn't his heart ache at all? It is difficult to understand gods. It can even drive a person mad. Perhaps if we listen to the continuation of the story, we can find an answer to this question. Let me tell you. The cold waters of Eldoria had turned into lava, flowing with a deepening sadness day by day. Princess Elijah, blacksmith Brondar, brave Eldred, and the other survivors were making an intense effort to become stronger and save their old lands from the clutches of the demon Malthraxis. However, questions remained unanswered, and Borealis' silence was increasingly weighing on them. One day, Eldred found Brondar preparing in a hurry, but no matter how much she asked, she could not get an answer about where he was going. She couldn't allow this. She informed Elijah, and together they followed him. Brondar, based on rumors, wanted to find the ancient temples thought to be in the cave systems on the outskirts of Eldoria, in order to nourish the last crumbs of hope within him. In this journey where iron and fire were blended, they were hesitant to speak to each other. Eventually, deep in the caves, they found signs of an ancient temple and a source of lost wisdom. The temple contained Borealis' thoughts and his messages in the dark days following the destruction of Eldoria. However, these messages were filled with difficult to understand symbols and mysterious words. The heroes decided to look through them to understand why Borealis remained silent. During this quest, Elijah was trying to decipher the information from an old book in the temple, thanks to the ancient knowledge and language skills passed down to her from her family. Over time, they learned that the freedom Borealis gave them when creating Eldoria was part of the process of people determining their own destinies and discovering their powers. But a more ancient plan lay behind Borealis' decision. One night the heroes gathered together in a single room in the temple. There must have been more information in this ruin that smelled of mold and damp. Elijah's eyes suddenly lit up as she read the ancient texts.
When the lone god Borealis created Eldoria for us, he actually intended to establish a balance. He allowed people to shape their own destinies. He knew that the children born from the dark power of shadow would eventually find this realm he created with his last remaining power, and they would envy the freedom of humans. So how do you find the essence of your lost family in the deep waters of eternity, Brondar?
Brondar frowned. He then touched the mushrooms that had managed to spread through the wall for almost a century, and for the first time in years, he opened his mouth.
If we defeat the evil forces here, eternity will be shaken. A single spark will spread to all realms. The gods will abandon their palaces of dust and...
Elijah interrupted him with great enthusiasm.
In this universal battle of light and shadow, if light wins, Borealis' loved ones will be freed.
Despite Elijah's joy, Eldred looked quite unhappy.
What's wrong, Eldred? Is there a problem?
Eldred momentarily lost her balance and knelt down.
Yes, his loved ones will be freed, but he has exhausted all his power.
Seemingly quite angry that he hadn't opened his mouth for years, Eldred added without giving Brondar a chance to speak.
That day in Eldoria, those weapons and armor you forged alone, the ancient text you went to find in the temples, appearing there despite all the impossibilities. These were Borealis' last gifts to us. He will not return.
The trio faced this reality there for a while, but eventually they all shook themselves and came to their senses. Now they felt more connected to this task. In any case, the dark days of Eldoria would once again be illuminated by Borealis' light. Under Elijah's leadership, the determined Eldorian people, following blacksmith Brondar, forged armies and launched a resistance against the demon Malthraxis and his army. After the Eldorian armies gathered in their new settlement, they set out behind the mountain. mountains towards their old lands. This was a massive army. Each warrior was burning with a longing, and the spark within them turned into anger as they approached Eldoria. For those who felt even the slightest bit of fear, looking at Rondar's armor, which shone brightly even in the dark, and his magical sword that illuminated the surroundings, was enough to overcome their fears. They did not know what they would encounter when they returned to their old home. I can definitely say that they did not find Eldoria as they had left it. The demons had made this place their home. They had built a city that seemed to have emerged from the heart of fire on these old lands. This bore the signature of Pyraxis, the god of fire. They say that Pyraxis, who brings darkness to endless realms, will achieve absolute power when he illuminates that place again with his fire. Pyraxis, the son of Shadow, was Borealis' eternal enemy who had ripped Borealis' family from him, and now the lands of Eldoria belonged to his fireborn servants. The demons, under their architecture surrounded by the heat of lava and paved with stones extracted from the depths of volcanoes, continued their lives as if waiting to carry out the orders of their god Pyraxis. At that moment, the demons perhaps experienced such a sudden fear for the first time in their lives. There were humans coming in droves from the foothills with wild screams, and a figure shining in front of them. Immediately, the demon legions gathered to respond to this attack. The apocalyptic battle took place right here. As the two angry armies charged at each other, the gods were watching them, so much so that the air suddenly darkened. The battle that was raging on the ground was carried to the heavens. The magnificent dance of the warriors turned into whirlwinds, and the demonic entities of the demons turned into flames. Rondar faced the demon called Malthraxis in the battlefield. Malthraxis had never seen such a bright night in his life. He was even struggling to open his eyes. Rondar's magical sword, blessed by Borealis himself, clashed with the massive axe gifted to Malthraxis by Pyraxis with a great noise. But the struggle between the darkness, which was overly confident and relaxed, and the light, which was aimed to prove itself and vowed to strive for it, was not an equal struggle at all. Malthraxis' axe could not withstand it any longer and suddenly flew away. Rondar took advantage of this, and in one move he pierced one of his wings, cut off his tail, and finally separated Malthraxis' head from his agonizing body. He took his head, raised it to the sky, and shouted,
"Your master is gone! Disperse, demons!"
Not knowing which way to run, the demons scattered in all directions, while the Eldorians began to chant Rondar's name with great enthusiasm. At that very moment, it is said that all the flames were extinguished, the lavas took refuge in the caves, and the smoke dispersed to the seven heavens. What remained was a people who survived the struggle, became stronger, and reshaped their own destiny. The people of Eldoria. In time, under the leadership of Princess Elijah, the city of Eldoria began to regain its former glory. But Elijah no longer believed it was right for the people to be ruled by nobles. A people bestowed with free will by their own god did not need noble leaders or ignoble buffoons. After a while, she withdrew from leadership and established a modest life for herself beyond the mountains. As for blacksmith Rondar, he practically disappeared after the war. In his name, with a bittersweet love, a statue was erected in the town square. Just like the old heroes, Rondar's statue stood upright in the square, defying eternity. It is said that Rondar had lost his wife Eldred on the battlefield. This has weighed heavily on him. His heart burned even more fiercely than the hearts of the demons. In that moment he wished that he had spoken to his wife more. As for the lone god Borealis, unfortunately, despite the passing years, he never returned. The eternal fountain, his creation, could not be rebuilt. Eldred was right. Borealis had spent the last of his strength of his painful life for his beloved servants. Nevertheless, the people of Eldoria clung tightly to the possibility that Borealis' loved ones had been freed. They were quite sure that one day they would come to bless Eldoria with their magnificence. Until then, the last snowflake did not return. Eldoria, far from its former glory, continued a difficult but steady resistance. The fragile peace between light and shadow was broken. The entire universe was plunged into eternal chaos. This was only the beginning of the War of the Universes. 1 year after the liberation of Eldoria. Princess Elijah, while walking on the beach in her solitary retreat, imagining the legends, saw a glow in the sky that illuminated the entire heavens above the sea. As the glow approached her, the sky began to flash in various colors. It was as if it were a waltz of colors. The glow approached Elijah. It was an unimaginable sight. Could this be? Elijah heard a single voice in the depths of her soul, one that would stay with her for the rest of her life.
I'm Aurora.
As the glow descended from the sky, strong winds blew over Elijah towards Eldoria. When the princess followed the wind, she witnessed scenes so unreal they seemed like a dream. Plants were reviving and multiplying, minerals were gushing from the ground, and animals were following the wind. Then suddenly the sky was pierced. First, a single snowflake landed on Elijah. It stayed there as if vowing to never leave her. Soon the entire land was covered in snow again. Eldoria had once again attained the eternal winter season it had longed for. More importantly, Aurora, who came from the essence of Borealis, had been freed. Aurora Borealis for many years watched over these people who shaped their own destinies without interfering. But whenever they needed help, Aurora was there. This was the epic of destruction and rebirth of Eldoria, the city of snow. But this was definitely not a happy ending. On the contrary, it was actually where everything began, the place where the war of the universes started.
In the falling snowflakes fly, plays this estranged and wandering bard. She longs to tell you near and far the tale of Eldoria, the lost city of snow. I've roamed the lands without a pause, seen the wretched heard their cause. My heart has ached with every pain, but Eldoria was a different domain. Brandar, craftsman tough and true, Brandar, warrior brave and blue. Your iron was strong, your blade so bright. Where have you gone? Vanished from sight. Blacksmith, you vanished from our sight. A snowflake danced in endless flight. Our days are now bleak, the world feels gray. Return, Brandar, don't stay away. Mighty you were, blacksmith bold, gentle yet strong, a tale retold. But sorrow took you deep and wide. For Borealis, your tears you couldn't hide. I've roamed the lands without